Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. This video is about a 6-week-old infant with vomiting. A 6-week-old boy comes to your OPD with several days of vomiting and irritability. He vomits everything he eats. The vomiting does not have any blood in it and it is not associated with diarrhea or fever. The vomit is described as being light in color but not green or yellow. The baby was born at full term with no complications. His birth weight was 3.2 kg. On physical examination, this is a well-nourished child. His weight is 4.4 kg, heart rate is 180 and respiratory rate is 38. His anterior fontanelle is slightly sunken and there are dry mucous membrane. Abdomen is non-distended with normal bowel sounds. Remainder of the examination is unremarkable. Laboratory studies reveal serum sodium 135 milliequivalent per liter, chloride 99 milliequivalent per liter, potassium 4 and bicarbonate 30 milliequivalent per liter. Now some multiple choice questions related to this scenario. Question number 1. This child diagnosis most likely is gastroesophageal reflux disease, malnutrition, pyloric stenosis, viral gastroenteritis or urea cycle defect. And the answer is C. Hypertrophic pyloric stenosis is a thickening of pylorus muscle. A patient usually becomes symptomatic after 3 weeks of age. It is characterized by non-bilious vomiting and hypochloremic alkalosis. Question number 2. Diagnostic test to confirm this diagnosis is pH probe, upper GI series, ultrasound of the abdomen, serum ammonia. Diagnosis should be made on clinical grounds. And the answer is C. Diagnosis of hypertrophic pyloric stenosis may be confirmed by palpation of thickened pylorus on physical examination. Pylorus will be firm, mobile, olive-shaped mass. However, the diagnosis is usually confirmed by ultrasound. Criteria include pyloric thickness of 3 to 4 mm, overall pyloric length of 15 to 19 mm, and pyloric diameter of 10 to 14 mm. Although changes will be seen on contrast study, but it has increased risk, so it is not the test of choice. Question number 3. In the case mentioned, if laboratory investigation and physical examination were normal, then most likely diagnosis would be gastroesophageal reflux disease, malrotation, pyloric stenosis, viral gastroenteritis, or urea cycle disorder. And the answer is gastroesophageal reflux disease. This is the most common diagnosis for a healthy infant with non-bilious vomiting. In a patient with severe viral gastroenteritis, you would not expect normal vital signs and the absence of fever or diarrhea. Now question number 4. Diagnostic test to confirm gastroesophageal reflux disease is pH probe, upper GI series, ultrasound of the abdomen, upper endoscopy. This is a diagnosis made on clinical grounds and no further testing is necessary. And the answer is E. GERD is a clinical diagnosis, although pH probe and endoscopy can be used to document changes consistent with reflux, but neither is needed to confirm the diagnosis. Question number 5. First line treatment for gastroesophageal reflux disease includes surgery, thickened feeds, antacid medication, change the infant formula, or B and C. And the answer is B, that is thickened feeds. First line treatment for reflux are conservative changes. These include limiting the volume baby consumes per feed, positioning the baby upright after feeds, and thickening infant's formula with 1 tablespoon of rice or cereal per ounce. Infant who fail this measure should then undergo antacid therapy. Now question number 6. If the child in the case A had bilious vomiting, then most likely diagnosis would be duodenal atresia, intestinal malrotation, pyloric stenosis, Hirschsprung disease, or intracranial hemorrhage. And the answer is B, that is intestinal malrotation. Bilious vomiting is indicative of distal obstruction. Most common cause of obstruction in this age group is intestinal malrotation and volvulus. Now question number 7. Least helpful diagnostic test you could use to confirm the intestinal malrotation is abdominal radiograph, barium enema, upper GI series, ultrasound, or CT scan. And the answer is A, that is abdominal radiograph. In a malrotation, duodenal jejunal loop is on the right side of the abdomen. Cecum is on the left side instead of the right. Malrotation occurs around the superior mesenteric vessels and superior mesenteric veins lies to the left of the artery instead of to the right. A barium enema can be used to locate the cecum and upper GI series can be used to visualize duodenum. CT scan is also helpful and an ultrasound can be used to locate the superior mesenteric vessels. The least helpful test is a plain radiograph. Question number 8. True statement about the lead bands is lead bands obstruct duodenum. Lead bands can originate from duodenum. These are peritoneal bands that can be associated with annular pancreas. These can originate in hepatic flexure or all of the above. And the answer is A. Lead bands obstruct duodenum. These are peritoneal bands that come from male rotated cecum to the right upper quadrant and can cause duodenal obstruction. Question number 9. If the child in the question 6 was 7 hours old and had Down syndrome, then likely diagnosis would be gastroesophageal reflux disease, malrotation, duodenal atresia, Hirschsprung disease, or AV canal malformation and heart failure. Answer is C, that is duodenal atresia. It is apparent in the first 24 hours of life. 30% of children with duodenal atresia have Down syndrome. Now question number 10. Diagnostic test you would order in this instance is abdominal radiograph, upper GI series, barium enema, pH probe or echocardiogram. And the answer is A. Abdominal radiograph will demonstrate double bubble sign. There is gas in the stomach and proximal duodenum but no gas in the distal bowel. Question number 11. When you go back and review this neonate prenatal ultrasound, you would likely see oligohydramnios, renal agenesis associated with this syndrome, polyhydramnias, hepatomegaly, no consistent intrauterine finding. And the answer is C, polyhydramnias. Amniotic fluid produced cannot travel through a gut with an atresia. Therefore, there is an excess of fluid. 50% of children with esophageal and duodenal atresia have polyhydramnias. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel.